Hi there. Open banking has quickly leapfrogged from just mere concept 2-3 years ago to almost inevitable reality today. Starting with PSD2 regulations in Europe in 2018, open banking is now being adopted in various shapes and forms across the world. Today, I'm joined with a fantastic panel where we're going to discuss, is open banking becoming a catalyst for mergers? I have here today Rollins, CEO at Nordigen, Hanna Raftel, CEO of Finmento, and Mats Persson Bergius, country manager at Lunar. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Oh, thank you.
Great to be here.
And maybe we start with brief introductions. Mats, why don't you take it away?
Definitely. So thank you for having me, Lana. I'm really excited to be here at Stockholm FinTech Week. So my name is Mats, as you've already stated. I am looking after Lunar's business here in the Swedish market. And Lunar, as many of you know, is a neobank. Started a few years ago. Just got our banking license a year and a bit ago in Denmark. And really excited this year to start scaling up our business in the Swedish market. We are live with a fantastic suite of deposit account and card products. You all should, of course, try our new metal card. It's really cool. And very excited actually about the opportunities that open banking brings to how we run our business here in this market. And very excited to be able to talk about more about that today.
Great. You know, Mats, I'm considering getting Lunar account myself, so I think you're doing great.
I'm shocked you haven't already.
I know, me too. Hanna, why don't you go next?
Yeah, so thank you very much, Lana, for having me, and also equally super excited about Stockholm FinTech Week. So I'm the CEO of Finmento, a pure technology provider within the fintech space, providing technology and digital services for new and old players within the banking and finance industry. Perhaps focusing more towards financing solutions right now, including such things as factoring and leasing, thinking cash flow management and working capital for companies as well. So touching on embedded finance.
Thank you, Hanna. It's really, really good to have you here. Join us today. And last but not least, Rollins.
Yeah, super excited to be here. So I'm Rollins. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Nordigen. Nordigen is Europe's first free open banking data API. Provide banking activity to major European banks. We're fully live in Sweden. So anyone who's interested to get access to banking data in Sweden, that's already possible. Nordigen is a licensed AISP. We have passported our license all across Europe, all the European Economic Area. On top of the free banking API, provide premium insights to banks, fintechs, and lenders who just want to get more value from open banking data. So that's us in a nutshell.
Fantastic. Well, let's kick it off then. And Hanna, why don't you start and tell us a little bit more? How would you characterize the current state of open banking?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a great question actually, because there's so much going on and a continuous involvement. But I think it's partly actually directed by regulation. And I think not for least, for example, KYC and AML providers that are part of the open banking and it's kind of crucial players within, for example, the onboarding process, right? So inevitably there are opportunities being created in this space. But the current state of open banking also, I think, very much driven by, frankly speaking, geographical differences. So different regions with different immediate demands and challenges. And when it comes to connecting with the banks through, for example, open APIs, etc., right? I think the fintech companies and banks are finding their way still how to best collaborate and work together, while at the same time keeping each other on their toes, which is ultimately a very good thing for the end consumer, right? And anyone using banking services. So overall, I would say the state of the open banking is really healthy, with a mix of competition between old and new players, as well as open banking and fintech carefully sort of being watched by regulators And at the same time, we have the consumers continuously asking and demanding for better services.
Thank you. And Roland, you're a little bit of a scene shaker, I would say. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I definitely second what Hannah said. Open banking is in a really interesting state. It's comparing to our neighbors across the pond, where open banking is very much market driven in the US, than in Europe. It's definitely regulator driven. In response to that, we're seeing that it's kind of a bit of a mess in different regions. In some regions, it's picking up faster. In some, it's a tiny bit slower. I think Nordics is definitely one of the regions where open banking is proved to show its true value, and the adoption is increasing. But there are still countries in Europe where banks are just kind of only recently starting to open up their APIs. That being said, we definitely see that the number of companies that are allowed to legally connect to those open APIs, the AISPs or account information service providers, the number of them is actually growing quite fast. And we're also seeing a lot of great information about how many users are connected to banking. So I think open banking is a really bright future, and for anyone who's starting with open banking today, I think the future is only ahead of us. So it's in an early stage, but it's developing very fast.
Thank you both. And Mats, I mean, Lunar is one of the rising stars here in Nordics when it comes to challenger banks. And from your perspective, what opportunities do you see in this space? How are you using the open banking platforms?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think open banking is really one of the to a large extent it's an enabler to the services that that Lunar and folks like us also provide. I think one of the big differentiators for the new breed of banks and anyone who's looking to disrupt in the financial service industry is characterized by an ability to simply integrate different services and products in a superior user experience compared to what many of us are used to today. And I think open banking is very much an enabler of a very large part of that. Particularly when it comes to obviously the traditional transaction account that many of us maybe have had for a long time with our legacy bank, and maybe sometimes is a little bit hard to move for various reasons to a new player. So there I think it's really transformational how open banking enables us to access that account to create a completely different experience for the user, and then of course add on to that incremental services as well, which may or may not be enabled by open banking per se, but still facilitated by that much simpler integration that is now possible through new technology.
Very interesting. So if we think about the last year a bit, open banking was a very hot topic. There's a lot of players. We saw some acquisitions. The Tink here in Sweden acquired 3 companies. We had the Visa Play deal now failed. Rollins, do you think it's going to be winner take it all situation?
I hope not. In that case, it would be pretty boring for the end users. Definitely, open banking depends a lot on the ability to gain scale. Companies who gain scale are able to offer connectivity for both payments and information at lower costs, and that's great for everyone in the ecosystem. But open banking is kind of the reason why it was so very introduced by the regulators. It was supposed to create competition and a lot more competition in space. And Lunar's example of being able to use open banking is a textbook example of how it's supposed to be done. That allows that levels the playing field in banking and allows new players to come and challenge the older ones. But hopefully it's not going to be a duopoly situation in open banking, the same way that we've seen in the card networks. It would be very ironic that open banking created competition, but open banking itself is kind of in a very sort of concentrated state. So I think to summarize, I think we're probably going to see a lot more acquisitions happen in the space. But we also see a lot of new companies still being created, and companies that are just come with different offerings, and they might use the existing connectivity, but they might have their own flavor to it. If anything, the last 2 years have showed that how creative people can be and how different those applications can look like. So I don't think it's a winner takes all market. There certainly will be large companies that operate, but I think there's plenty of room for several companies to coexist.
Right. I mean, it's interesting that the title of this panel is if it's becoming a catalyst for mergers, while the whole purpose of open banking is to increase the competition, right? Mats and Hanna, do you agree with this, or do you have other opinions?
No, I agree with it, that it's clearly scale is an incredibly important part of it for many of the fintech and open banking players. But at the same time, I think the regulators are very keen to create or not create something that is too big to fail, right? And I absolutely agree with Roland. I think there are many flavors and many niche services that smaller players and medium players will continue to get involved in and evolve the industry.
Yeah, and I think it's also a maturing industry, right? So I think it's only logical to see different types of consolidation as different business models are being tested out. I mean, Nordgen is also obviously disrupting through one type of business model, and you have other players that are pursuing underwriting business models based on open banking, etc. So there's going to be some testing out of different solutions to really see what's gonna work in the long term. But I think at the end of the day, there's also so much disruption, as we see here over during this week only. There's so much disruption in the fintech space that I think you can't really just sit still. Eventually, if you don't move and try different things, someone else is going to come and take over the space that you were in before.
But I think one interesting area, right, is the whole evolution around embedded finance, which open banking will allow for, because that is integrating financial services much more with traditional businesses and sectors and industries that we haven't really seen before. And that is when we're talking about sort of non-financial companies being able to provide financial services directly, rather than through the usual intermediaries. And that's clearly an interesting space where we will commingle in a way we haven't done before with other industries.
Do any of you know some interesting examples of this, or have seen some already doing that?
Well, I mean, in the embedded finance space, you could argue that Alibaba was one of the pioneers, right, when they started with Alipay and evolved into Ant Financial. And I think Shopify in the US or Canadian e-commerce platform is another example, right, where they integrated financial services, which now accounts for more than 50% of the revenues. And that was not at all the space where they originally started. So I think we'll see more of those kind of initiatives.
Interesting. And
we are certainly looking at it.
Yeah, and talking a bit more about sort of like different use cases, what are the niche areas that we're seeing in open banking that you see besides this evolving as well? A question open to who likes to take it.
Yeah, well, we've been looking quite a lot into open banking use cases. Well, there's the traditional use cases. Like open banking actually is pretty old. It's sort of Yodlee was among the very first ones to take it mainstream already, end of 90s. And then open banking was all about account segregation, seeing all your accounts in one place and being able to, just be better with your finances. So like personal finance as a use case is a pretty big one, always has been, always will be. And that's, more important today than ever, with financial literacy being such an important topic right now. But Europe is also interesting in a way that Europe is pretty fragmented, despite we're being in the same union and in a lot of cases sharing the same currency. But things like credit is super complicated. Every single market has its own approach, and there's no way to passport your credit history from one place to the other, even if the countries are very close. So open banking helps to solve those issues, and then things like onboarding. I think there's is the only time to sort of for people to be able to prove their identity online without needing to jump through several hoops. And open banking is able to sort of simplify those use cases a lot. And then, onboarding is something that is not just financial services. Coming back to what Hannah said, that something is going mainstream when it's being adopted outside of the financial sector. Then this is something where non-financial institutions could also kind of start to plug in open banking and use that to just create smoother experiences to their customers without them needing to actually just build complicated flows and with forms and everything.
Thank you.
And if I may just add to that, I would just say also, we often talk about open banking for focusing on the consumer, the retail clients, but there's obviously a massive market amongst particularly SME, which is very much underserved by traditional players. And I think when it comes to credit scoring, which often can be a combination of the individual and the enterprise, right? There's a lot of exciting things happening with the help of companies like Rollins is representing.
And yeah, I definitely agree, and I think actually both the whole small business and consumer segment has the opportunity for a lot of very exciting use cases around open banking. I think one of the things that we experience at Lunar very much is that as you look at ripping apart parts of the financial services space and actually creating a much better user experience, and particularly in a multi-market setting, as we're now in Denmark, Sweden, Norway, you realize that there's also a lot of national infrastructure that you bump up against, as well as a lot of, and I know you're talking a lot about regulation as well, Donna, this week, a lot of national regs when it comes to consumer protection and AML and KYC. And in spite of the EU-wide regulations that we have, it's actually not always consistent between the markets. But what is really facilitated through the various open banking type solutions is very much a more standardized multi-market simplified approach to both understanding the customer identity, but also transferring money from accounts and facilitating payments and the like. So actually, I think one of the things that the EU had tried to achieve from a single market perspective a long time ago is actually only now being enabled, because it becomes much simpler to understand who is the customer you have on the books, where are they paying money, how do you pay money to and from their accounts using an infrastructure that is more modern than the national infrastructure. So I think those cases are really actually opening up both competition, but also opening up for various niche players that focus on particular small elements of this value chain.
So do you use any open banking components in your geographical growth strategy?
I think it's super important for us. I mean, we obviously use the standardized, AISP integration to enable consumers to experience and see what they have in their various bank accounts in our user experience, simply because we provide a much better UX than all of the other players in this space. In addition to that, there's various use cases that we're using and are looking at from a payments facilitation perspective as well. So definitely more to come there, I would say. But already today, of course, this is a key component of our growth strategy. We don't need to be at this point. We're not demanding that the customer make us their first bank. We're okay to be the other bank, but we want to be the other bank that really provides the best experience when it comes to managing your money.
Fantastic. Thank you. We are almost out of our time, but I will ask sort of part of the last question is to all of you, if you would bet on one business area or case that will be powered by open banking, what would it be? Rollins, if you want to start.
Yeah, well, I think it's been talked a lot about a pan-European credit bureau. I think it's time we had that. I think I'm too tired of hearing my friends who kind of move between countries and they say they have to build credit every single time they move, and it's hard to get an apartment if you don't have a bank account and all those things. So I'd love to see open banking powering the next credit bureau that's kind of actually pan-European.
Someone who's moved to 7 countries, I can testify that that is indeed the case.
Your life would be so much easier.
Yes. Yeah. Hannah?
To me, it's a lot about that overall, and actually what you just said is a part of that, but it's the customer experience, right? That it's easy to use and the services are where you want them, when you want them, and including overall better financial products and at the right price. And I think we could have a separate session on what is the right price, but being an economist is back to allocating capital in a more efficient way.
Mm. And what about you, Mats?
So obviously, I think what both Roland and Hannah are onto, I think are actually super relevant use cases. But obviously, coming from Lunar, I am going to have to say that I do think that if you think about the traditional banking relationship and kind of solving the problem of I have money that I need to manage, that use case is really what open banking is all about. And then if you boil it down to having a transaction account and then being able to pay bills and transfer funds, etc., that use case going forward is it's not just powered by open banking, it's going to be all about open banking, because you want to have money in different places and you want to have easy access to those and be able to move them about, and you also want to have sometimes social layers on top of them. You want to be able to interact with your friends, have accounts together, things like that. All of those are use cases that will to some extent be powered by open banking. So that's really where I think we're placing a lot of bets at this point in time.
Cool, very good. I think all of you are here because I think that you're up and coming as your company. So maybe to wrap up, you can give a couple of words each on, so what's next for Nordegen, Femento, and Lunar? Hannah.
Yeah.
Or
Go for it. Who was rolling? Go.
So we've launched a new offering, the first free open banking API in Europe, and we did that literally 8 weeks ago. There's a lot of work ahead. So this year is all going to be all about scaling that vision into reality. So that's kind of, to summarize, our plans.
Good luck. Hannah, what about you? What's up next for you?
I think helping provide financing solutions for non-financial companies, and that might very well be in partnership with a number of the more traditional players, as well as new financial companies.
Awesome. And Lunar?
Yeah, so I think this is the time to make the public a service announcement, right? That we're single and we're looking for partners, right? So this year in Sweden is all about enhancing and developing the infrastructure that we have to really plug in incremental services that our users are looking for and that add value to their financial lives. We have a lot of infrastructure to build on, but we also are looking to make those use cases even better. And so I think this year, watch this space as we look to make available incremental products beyond just the transaction accounts that we have now with the associated very cool, I must say, card suite that we have. There will be things happening in a lot of other areas. Small business was mentioned here, for example. I think that's a super interesting area that we are looking very hard at. So look forward to following up with the participants here, a lot of other participants in the FinTech Week, and we'll definitely keep you guys posted on exciting things happening this year.
What a great note to finish on. We're on the track talking about fintech partnerships and market consolidation, and started with mergers, and now we finish off with let's partner up and build a great future together. Thank you so much all for joining. It was really my pleasure to speak to you all.